Good afternoon. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour. Couple little facts here. I'm packing a Colt King Cobra. That's a .357 caliber firearm with a black rubber grip and a 6-inch barrel, capable of piercing body armor at a distance of up to 27 feet. And it can put a hole in human bone and flesh the size of the Grand Canyon, which, by the way, is coming up on the left-hand side of the plane. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the plane.
No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Should I tell you? Should I tell you? Oh, you're Boy Scouts, but you know life. You know life. You know I'm totally off script right now.
Hello, this is News Dive, and I'm your host, Shane. It is Tuesday, July 25th, 2023, and let's dive into the headlines. The Teamsters have a tentative contract with UPS. It would raise minimum pay for part-time workers to $21 an hour. Current part-timers would get up to a $1.50 an hour additional raise. UPS would also hire 30,000 full-time jobs. The contract also has a host of other provisions that workers demanded. They include the end of the two-tier wage system for drivers, top rates of $49 an hour for full-time drivers, no more driver-facing cameras or harassment by bosses, and air conditioning in the trucks. Teamsters will be able to vote on the contract from August 3rd through August 22nd. The U.S. Border Patrol is holding migrants in an outdoor pen in a deadly stretch of the Arizona desert amid a record-setting heat wave, photos taken by The Intercept reveal. The DeSantis team is facing blowback after reports that a campaign staffer over the weekend shared a video of the presidential candidate with a Nazi symbol. One scene caught a lot of people's attention: an image of DeSantis, a Nazi symbol interposed over the Florida flag, and soldiers marching towards it. The far-right circular symbol, known as a Sonnenrad, a symbol co-opted by Nazis in their attempt to claim an Aryan heritage, today it's often found in white supremacist literature and the manifestos of far-right mass shooters. And apparently, it's also found in the 2024 presidential campaign. As former President Donald Trump's legal woes mount, the line between his criminal defense and his 2024 presidential campaign is blurring, a political and financial muddying that the Washington Post projects will only worsen as multiple prosecutions continue to dominate his time, resources, and messaging. Half of the money Trump raised last quarter went to a campaign-affiliated political action committee that is covering his legal bills. More than 100 congressional Democrats on Monday implored President Joe Biden's administration to immediately enact a federal standard to protect workers from extreme heat. Activists around the world held a day of action on Saturday as the climate clock for the first time ticked below 6 years, signaling how far away humanity is from using up the remaining carbon budget to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Israeli lawmakers on Monday approved part of the proposed judicial overhaul that would limit the Supreme Court's power to check government action, a key priority of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government. An analysis published Tuesday shows that the 5 largest pharmaceutical companies in the United States raked in a combined earnings of $82 billion last year and rewarded investors with billions of dollars in dividends and stock buybacks, all while hiking prices for prescription drugs and fighting federal efforts to curb costs. A formerly classified document published Friday by NPR revealed how the Pentagon dismissed highly credible evidence of civilian deaths caused by the October 2019 U.S. assassination of Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in Syria. For years, the Pentagon dismissed a December 2019 NPR report of a U.S. military helicopter attacking Syrian civilians in the Barsha during the raid, killing 2 cousins, traveling in a van, and blowing the hand off a third man, claiming the victims were enemy combatants who ignored repeated warning shots. The climate crisis, driven by the burning of fossil fuels, has significantly increased the likelihood of the dangerous heat waves that baked 3 different continents this July. Without climate change, the heat wave that broke records in China would have been a 1 in 250-year event, and the temperatures that measured in Mexico and the US and in southern Europe would have been virtually impossible, World Weather Attribution concluded in a report released Tuesday. Unless the world rapidly stops burning fossil fuels, these events will become even more and more common as the world will experience heat waves that are even hotter and longer lasting, the report authors warned. Ukraine is the most heavily mined country in the world, and demining efforts could take decades or even hundreds of years, the Washington Post reported on Saturday. The report said about 30% of Ukraine, or 67,000 square miles, has been contaminated by mines and other ordnance and will require demining. The area is larger than the US state of Florida. Political divisions over vaccines may have caused thousands of unnecessary deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a new study, which found that registered Republicans in Ohio and Florida had a significantly higher excess death rate than Democrats after vaccines became widely available. And that will conclude today's headlines. When Representative Pramila Jayapal called Israel a racist state at the Netroots Nation conference, corporate media dutifully covered the political backlash, but avoided evaluating the veracity of Jayapal's statement. Addressing activists who interrupted a panel to protest panelist Representative Jan Schakowsky's refusal to support a bill protecting Palestinian children, Jayapal said,
I'll just leave. Maybe I should just walk off.
Guys, can I say something? Can I say something as somebody that's been in the streets and has participated in a lot of demonstrations? I want you to know that we have been fighting to make it clear that Israel is a racist state, that the Palestinian people deserve self-determination and autonomy, that the dream of a two-state solution is slipping away from us, that it does not even feel possible. It does not even feel possible. And I want you to know that while you may have arguments with whether or not some of us on stage are fighting hard enough, I do want you to know that there is an organized opposition on the other side, and it isn't the people that are on this stage.
Republicans immediately jumped on the statement, working to cast the Democratic Party as anti-Semitic for as many news cycles as possible. Top Democrats swiftly rebuked Jayapal, distancing themselves from her remarks and declaring that Israel is not a racist state. Jayapal offered a lengthy apology, explaining, "I do not believe the idea of Israel as a racist nation, but rather that Netanyahu's extreme right-wing government has engaged in discriminatory and outright racist policies, and that there are extreme racists driving that policy within the leadership of the current government." Most major US news outlets covered the blowup over Jayapal's statement, but astonishingly few took the obvious and necessary journalistic step of fact-checking it. NPR discussed the events under the headline, "Top House Democrats Reject Representative Jayapal's Comments Calling Israel a Racist State." CNN went with, "Top House Democrats Rebuke Jayapal's Comments that Israel is a racist state," as she tries to walk them back. The Washington Post version ran under the headline, "Democrats Push Back on Representative Jayapal's Description of Israel as a Racist State." NPR characterized her words as controversial. The Post and CNN quoted top Democrats calling the remarks unacceptable, and CNN added a quote from Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz calling them hurtful and harmful, wholly inaccurate and insensitive. Both NPR and CNN briefly mentioned that progressive Democrats have concerns about human rights in Israel, but offered no further information about them. But of course, progressive Democrats aren't the only ones with concerns about human rights or racism in Israel, and Jayapal didn't come up with the racist state characterization out of thin air. In 2021, Human Rights Watch published a lengthy report spelling out its determination that Israel has committed crimes of apartheid against Palestinians, which is defined under international law as an intent to maintain a system of domination by one racial group over another, systematic oppression by one racial group over another, and one or more inhumane acts as defined carried out on a widespread or systemic basis pursuant to those policies. Human Rights Watch explained, for those inclined to split hairs, that this applies to Palestinians because under international law, race and racial discrimination have been broadly interpreted to include distinctions based on descent and national or ethnic origin, among other categories. Earlier the same year, Israeli human rights group B'Tselem released a report declaring Israel an apartheid regime. Amnesty International followed the next year, publishing a 280-page report titled Israel's Apartheid Against Palestinians that declared that Amnesty International concludes that the State of Israel considers and treats Palestinians as an inferior non-Jewish racial group. These reports came about after Israel in 2018 passed a law with constitutional status that declares Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people, and that the right of national self-determination in the State of Israel is unique to the Jewish people. In other words, that Israel is not a nation state for its Palestinian residents, whether accorded citizenship or not, and that Palestinians subject to Israel's control have no right to self-determination. As B'Tselem explained in its report, it is true that the Israeli regime largely followed these principles before, yet Jewish supremacy has now been enshrined in basic law, making it a binding constitutional principle, unlike ordinary law or practices by authorities which can be challenged. This signals to all state institutions that they not only can, but must promote Jewish supremacy in the entire area under Israeli control. Jayapal's statement, therefore, that Israel is a racist state has clear grounding in international law, as multiple respected human rights organizations have documented. But in the flood of coverage, mentions of any human rights organizations that have designated Israel an apartheid state were extremely rare, and only came after Palestinian American Representative Rashida Tlaib highlighted them in a speech on the House floor against a House resolution declaring Israel is not a racist or apartheid state. At publication, a nexus search of U.S. news sources found 474 articles and transcripts since July 15 that mentioned Jayapal and racist state. Only 24 of those mentioned Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, or B'Tselem. The New York Times quoted Tlaib saying Israel is an apartheid state, and noted that in her speech she cited determinations from the United Nations officials, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem that Israel's treatment of Palestinians amounted to apartheid. This was followed with 3 sources calling the racist state characterization contrary to the facts, false, and hateful. The Hill offered a brief article about Tlaib's comment, and the Washington Post's follow-up article mentioned them as well. Opinion columnists in Newsweek and The Post were noteworthy standouts. Both noted the human rights organization's designations and explored the political context beyond the current theatrics. Ishan Thaor's Post column headlined, "It's the Republicans, not the Democrats, who are radical on Israel," focused on the contradictions of growing U.S. public support for Palestinians as the GOP moves radically rightward on Israel-Palestine foreign policy. The Newsweek column by Omar Badar offered the only forceful defense of Jayapal's remarks FAIR could find in establishment media, under the headline, "Representative Jayapal was right. Israel is a racist state." Badar argued we cannot live in a functioning democracy and make informed policy decisions if certain subjects are taboo, and if acknowledging reality in them is derided. Newsweek diligently countered Badar's column with another under the headline, "No, Israel is not a racist state." When Amnesty released its report last year, the New York Times refused to even mention the report for 52 days. When journalist Katie Halper, in her co-host position at Hill TV, recorded a political commentary about the human rights reports titled "Israel is an Apartheid State," the Nexstar media outlet killed the segment and asked Halper. That we could even find one critical piece in the wake of Jayapal's comment in an establishment publication was surprising, given the strong taboo against criticism of Israel that cuts across outlets. But it's lamentable that when the controversy at hand is a politician calling Israel a racist state, most of US media can't bring themselves to acknowledge that the human rights community has weighed in on this question in the affirmative. And that will conclude today's episode. Please like and follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a good review, 5 stars, and share the episode. Follow the show on social media. And I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.